We've released three major policy reports that were the culmination of a year's worth of work, investigations, hearings, and member input. We're now trying to turn those into legislative reality. But I think perhaps the most important function of the committee is to try and explain to our colleagues and the American people why any of this matters. And for those who are in the DC Beltway, certainly those who work at think tanks, it may seem obvious why the defense of Taiwan or the genocide in Xinjiang matters, but I'm not sure it's as obvious to Americans who are just trying to live their lives. For example, I had 600 people come to a town hall in my district to talk about the lake sturgeon being listed as an endangered species, a huge issue for Northeast Wisconsin. I'm not sure I could get 20 people to come for a discussion about China. So I'd like to give both of you the opportunity to sort of answer for that everyday American who you've represented in your past job. Why does this matter? Why should they care about the threat posed by the CCP? And I'll start with you, Secretary Pompeo.
You know, Chairman Gallagher, it doesn't surprise me that you think that it might not be of as much interest to your constituents. I would describe this differently. I don't think these are two separate things. I'll hear people say, well, this is domestic policy and this is foreign policy. Today, they are so deeply interconnected. What happens in Kyiv doesn't stay there. What happens in Gaza doesn't stay there. These threats are real. We can see it on their southern border as well, right? There are bad actors trying to infiltrate our nation across that border as well. And then for the folks back in Kansas, so many American jobs depend on the fact that we will confront the Chinese Communist Party's efforts to destroy our manufacturing base, to steal our intellectual property. There are real economic outcomes for ordinary families all across America that depend on a United States that is prepared to defend its own economy, to create the rule of law, to have trade lanes open, all of these things that somehow seem distant, they're right on top of us. Last piece, I talked about China inside the gates. You know, we closed in the Trump administration the Chinese consulate in Houston, Texas. We didn't close it because we disliked them. We closed it because they were conducting what I believe is one of the largest espionage operations ever against the American people from that very facility. They're in our universities today, operating to steal our finest high-end research. These things matter to American economic growth for years in front of us. And if we get it wrong, then our children and grandchildren will live in America that looks fundamentally different. We can't permit that to happen. And so it is not about something 6,000 miles away. It is about something just down the street for you, your family, and your neighbors.
Thank you, sir. Secretary Panetta, why does it matter in Monterey?
It matters because it really is about the fundamental security of our country. And I think one of the things that marks the American people is not just their common sense and their spirit and their resilience, but it's also their willingness to secure not just their family, but their country. As Secretary of Defense, I had the opportunity to look into the eyes of our men and women in uniform. At that time, going to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And what I saw was a willingness on the part of these young men and women to put their lives on the line in order to fight and die for this country. To fight and die for this country. And so there are men and women from across this country who have assumed the responsibility of providing security and putting their lives on the line in order to defend this country. So it is incredibly important to what I call the American dream. I'm the son of Italian immigrants. I used to ask my parents, why did you come to this country? They came in the early 30s. They came from a poor area in Italy. And I never forgot my father's response. He said, your mother and I believe we could give our children a better life in this country. I think that's the American dream, giving our children a better life. And that's what this is all about. If we don't provide security for this country, if we don't deal with the threats that we're facing abroad, then we are not providing security. We are not providing the American dream for our children.
Thank you, sir. I yield my 1 second. The ranking member is recognized for 5 minutes.